Hi, I'm Esther Avant. Rich and I recently had an awesome chat here on the podcast. I'd love for you to check out my podcast, To Your Health. With over 350 episodes, it's all about helping you stop starting over and finally follow through on your goals, starting with your health. You can find it wherever you're listening now.
Hey everyone, it's Rich Bennett. Can you believe it? The show is turning 10 this year. I am so grateful for each and every one of you who've tuned in, shared an episode, or even joined the conversation over the years. You're the reason that this podcast has grown into what it is today. Together, we've shared laughs, tears, and moments that truly matter. So I want to thank you for being part of this journey. Let's make the next 10 years even better.
Coming to you from the Freedom Federal Credit Union Studios, Harford County Living presents Conversations with Rich Bennett.
Slow pitch
It's probably the least sexy part of work, and I don't have the answer. That's okay. No. The truth is,
imagine fighting a relentless wildfire, surrounded by flames and smoke, when suddenly the fire turns on you, leaving you trapped and fighting for your life. This was the reality for Montana firefighter Dan Steffensen during the infamous Summer of Hell in 2021. Critically injured in a burnover incident, Dan's road to recovery was nothing short of miraculous. His story isn't just one of survival. It's a powerful testament to human resilience, the unbreakable bonds of community, and the spirit of those who risk it all to protect others. And today, I am joined by award-winning author A.J. Otjen, who captured Dan's incredible journey in her new book, Burned Over. And I'm just going to say it right now, for all of you listening, go to A.J. Otjen, that's OTJEN.com, and purchase this book. And when you purchase the book, make sure you leave a full review and purchase a copy for other people too. I guarantee you this is a book that's going to, you're just going to be floored, and we're about to hear the story. How you doing, AJ?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for that introduction. It was wonderful.
Because you've been writing for a while, correct?
I've been writing academically for a long time, and I started writing creatively about 10 years ago. And it's a bit of a difference. Academically requires a lot more research. It's almost all research and getting it down to prove a theory. And then creatively requires having a story to tell and making it much more of a narrative.
I was going to ask you, which one do you like more?
I enjoy that much more, of course.
So when you started writing creatively, how many different books have you written for that?
5, 6, 7.
All right. Those 8. Of you listening, she knows what she's doing. When she's sitting there, she's got to count in her head how many. I mean, wow, 8. They're all novels, right?
No. This is my first nonfiction novel. This is my first nonfiction novel. The others are actually children's books that are focused on Apsalika Crow, which is one of the tribes here in Montana, and a couple of them are actually in the curriculum because they did require research. So I do also do a lot of research for my children's books, and they also feature Crow artists. The last one was chosen by the Library of Congress, and it featured an artist named Kevin Redstar. So we put a lot of work into these books. We research Crow history, Crow folklore, Crow art, and that's why they're in the curriculum, because there's something called Indian Education for All,
right?
Which is a federal law, which is supposed to be putting much more, historic, accurate Indian education into our mainstream curriculum. But we've pretty much failed at doing it because there's not a lot of really good books out there to put into the curriculum. So we focused on getting that done, and we got 2 Absolica Crow books into the Montana curriculum. And
are those
one of them,
available
like I
for
said,
anybody
was
to
chosen by the
purchase
Library of
them?
Congress. So
Okay, good.
yeah. Yes, they actually are. They're also on. They're also on my website, and they're also on Amazon along with this book. But this was my first. Yeah, this was my first.
That's
nonfiction
one of the things I love to do
novel.
is to read the history books because, well, I mean, let's face it. When you and I were growing up in school, they don't have the history books like we did back then. And you always have to go back,
Right.
and it's always good to go back and read some of this stuff to refresh your mind as well. Plus, you always learn something new. I mean, we were younger. We weren't paying attention to a lot of the things they were teaching us in school. So, God, everybody get those books too. All right, I want to get right to the point with Dan. How did you find out about Dan, and what made you decide to write his story?
Well, I'm a professor at Montana State, and my students were putting on an ad. We're creating an ad campaign about raising money for personal protective equipment for firefighters, which is what Dan was wearing when he was burned over. And so it was a year after he was burned, and he was the star of our ad campaign. He did a great job. He was the voiceover, and then at the end, he stood up wearing his outfit, saying, "Please give money so that all firefighters can have, this equipment, and they can live like I did." And so I met him on that shoot that my students were doing about a year after he was burned over. And he had read a couple of my books. He saw an article about one of the books that Kevin Red Star and I did together. And he said, "Well, would you write my book?" And I went, "Kevin, I'm really good at about 2,000 to 3,000 words." So because I said I also had a column in the Billings Gazette, and I bet I did focus on courage in Montana and ethics and social issues and and history and things like that. And he said, "Well, I think you can write my book." And I went, "Well, how do you say no, right, to a hero that's been burned over, and all the everybody volunteers for the firefighters?" So I said, "Okay, I'll do it."
Wow.
And it took 2.5 years of research and interviews and becoming a narrative writer. And 40,000 words later, when I'm used to 2,000 to 3,000 words, and a lot of tears because everybody I talked to cried when they remembered everything that happened. Dan and I cried a lot working together because he is a tough guy and he does not share his feelings very easily. So to get him to do that took a lot of, I would say, we had to become very close friends, very trusted friends, to talk about what really happened and how he felt about it, because it was not easy. It was a very difficult journey for him. And everybody around him.
An author this. I've had tons of authors on, but everything you just mentioned, it just triggered a light bulb in my head. And I don't know if it's ever been done. Well, I'm sure it has. But when you were interviewing all these people and speaking with Dan, were you videotaping all of this? Because it sounds like it would make a great documentary as well.
I actually recorded it on my little Apple phone. I recorded all the interviews because I have very bad handwritings and I couldn't read my own notes. I started off just taking notes, but then I couldn't read my handwriting. So I said, "Y'all mind if I record this?" So that would have been interesting to do a video camera. But
wow,
I do have a lot of audio, yes. And when I say it's a narrative nonfiction, I would say it's intruded upon with a journalistic style because I have so many direct quotes from so many people that are in the book, and from doctors to EMTs to firefighters to fire chiefs to the honor guard in Utah, because the day when he was burned, he was flown that night to Salt Lake City, which is one of the best burn centers in the country. And the honor guard, the Utah honor guard, met him, when he came off the plane in the ambulance bay, and they took one look at him. He was laid out with tubes in his mouth, and and his head was just completely, raw. And they said, okay, we're standing over this guy until he dies, because that's what they do. They're in their full dress uniform from cover to shiny shoes, and they stand at attention until a firefighter dies. That's what the honor guard does. And he just did not die, and he was supposed to, because he was 65 years old and he was on rheumatoid arthritis medicine, which weakens your immune system, and he had 60% of his body covered with 3rd-degree burns. And yeah. And when he was first burned, he didn't realize. He kept saying, "I'm okay, I'm fine." Because it burns it destroys your nerves. Your skin doesn't have any nerves anymore. So he's walking around, and they call it the walking dead, because your organs are starting to shut down. And usually folks like this die within a day, but they're walking around thinking they're just fine because they're not feeling any pain. But right. But the EMT, it took like 20 minutes to get from the burn site to Billings emergency room, and the EMT was really stressed. And she describes the moment. That ride in the ambulance is one of the most profound experiences of her life, because she thought that he was going to die before they got to the hospital. And they all know each other. They're all first responders in one little county, and so here she's got Dan, one of her compadres, probably going to die before she even gets into the hospital. But she got him there. And then even in the ER, everybody had, behind the masks, had tears in their eyes. And that's when he started thinking, geez, everybody's crying. Am I really as hurt as they think they are? And before they put me, and the doctor saying, I'm going to put you out now, and you're going to wake up in Utah. And he's thinking, are these my last words? Why is everybody so sad?
How long did the recovery take for him?
Go ahead. Months. Well, actually, you never completely recover from burns. Because what the 40% of your body that is not burned becomes your skin grafts. So it ends up being 100% of your body. And it's torture to recover from burns. He was in a coma for a while, a few weeks, and his family arrived. Yeah, his family was estranged at the time. But they came from all over the country when they were notified, and they were not a typical firefighter family, because they were not in Montana, and they didn't know anything about being a firefighter family. That was another thing the honor guard did, was they met them at the airport. They said, now this is what you're going to see when you get there. And he was just covered in gauze from head to toe, feeding tube, intubated. And they were like, holy cow. And yet they all decided to come together as a family and take turns, work together.
Wow.
He was never left alone when he was in the coma and when he was recovering, because they worked together for one purpose, and that was to save Dan. So family is a big part of this book, and the community of Red Lodge is a big part of this book, because it was the summer of hell. They had several tragedies happen to them, and it became so important for Dan to come home. Please, Dan, we had a huge fire. We lost a hiker. We've lost another firefighter. You have got to live. You have got to come home to us, because we can't take any more sadness in this town this summer.
No, go ahead.
And go ahead. Well, when I started out writing the book as an academic, researching fire, researching firefighting, researching weather, researching radio frequencies. And I kept thinking, this is not going anywhere, this story. It wasn't until I talked to all the townspeople and understood their pain and their emotion that I realized this is the story. Getting Dan home was the story. Why he was so important to the town, that was the story. And he really wanted it to be a fire book. And I said, no, Dan, this is a human book. This is a human story. And we need to capture the love and get the love on the page.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult for me, for an academic. And I just had to raise my narrative writing skills.
You mentioned there was multiple tragedies,
and cried to it.
You mentioned there was multiple tragedies that summer in Red Lodge.
What? Yeah, it started with the Robertson Draw fire, which came over the mountain and right to the edge of town, and they were getting ready to evacuate the town. Red Lodge sits right on the edge of Yellowstone National Park. So it's surrounded by fuel or forest and grass. So everybody in town is, if they're not a member of the fire department, they're part of the family that's a member of the fire department. Mm-hmm. And they're always on high alert. Fire season is always very scary for Red Lodge, Montana. And so this year, sure enough, fire happened. It came right over the mountain and right into town, right on the edge of town. Very, very scary, very moment. And that fire, though the blew away, the wind shifted and it moved down a different path than actually Main Street. It didn't go out until the snows came in October and November. So that fire was raging all summer long. And then a hike, that was very difficult. And then a Montana graduate, a recent graduate, a very skilled climber, went up to the Beartooth and did not come back. So search and rescue, which is a part of the fire department, they were out all summer looking for this graduate, with dogs and helicopters and everything. And they didn't find her until the end of summer. They found her remains. And then another firefighter, very talented snowboarder, because Red Lodge also has a ski mountain. So this guy worked on the mountain, also worked in restaurants in town. Everybody knew him in town. Young family. He fell on his skateboard and hit his head on the pavement. Was on life support. And they finally had to take him off life support. And so Dan was in a coma in Utah. And so they were saying, Dan, we can't take anymore. Take anymore as a town. You've got to come home to us, because he was part of the beloved firefighting team, a senior firefighter. Traveled with him all across the country. To California, wherever their crews were needed, they would go and fight fires. In fact, Dan would have been on this last California fire if he hadn't been fighting cancer, which he's fighting cancer.
Oh, that big one out in LA.
So,
oh wow.
Yeah. Yes, right. Yeah, there like several crews from Montana went to fight the big fires in California. Like they always do, and Dan would have been a part of that. But but right now he's basically fighting cancer.
Well, so with the Red Lodge community, especially with all their tragedies, what do you think made the community so resilient? Especially in the face of all those multiple tragedies that summer.
They learned to be resilient. Okay. What they learned that summer, and I talked to so many of them. I said, well, how did you heal from this? And they said, we never healed, but we learned that we can handle hard things. That's what we learned from this experience. Now we know how tough we are. We're as tough as Dan, and we'll always be scarred, just like Dan is scarred on his body. We're scarred as well. But all of us now know that how to lean on each other, how to share our emotions to get through anything. You can't hold it in. You got to talk about it. You got to talk with each other. But now we know that we can survive tough things, and we always will. No matter how tough it gets, we can survive it. And that experience and that knowledge is huge. And in fact, the very next summer was when the Yellowstone River flooded and just wiped out so much of Red Lodge was hit hard. They had a huge flood that knocked down so many buildings in the main street of town. And everybody said, it's a good thing it happened to this town, to this team, because we knew exactly what to do.
Right.
Because of what they'd been through the summer before.
Wow. Holy cow. That's just...
They're a tough town.
Yeah.
Very tough town.
And the thing is,
they have to be.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you capture all of that in the book. And, when people read this, because how a lot of people are, they'll be like, wow, there's no way that this could be real. But it is. And that's, yeah, I mean,
Right. That's right.
You don't hear a lot of communities that pull together like that anymore. I mean, that's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah,
they're small, and it's an old Western town. Jeremiah Johnson was once the constable over Red Lodge. Originally, it was Crow country. Yeah, it was originally Crow country. I mean, the Apsolica Crow lived. This was the entire Yellowstone River was the home of the Crow tribe for over 400 years. And this was part of that Crow country area until the treaty of, like, I think the 1900s, the turn of the century. And then the Crow were moved over east to their reservation. And this became a mining town. So it's 1910, 1920, I think, was when the town was established. That's how old the town is over 100 years old. And the main street of town is a perfect movie set for a Western movie. It's all antique stores, brick faces, So it's.
So I got to get out there. Is what you're trying to tell me, AJ?
Probably
right?
Over 1 million. Yeah. But it is surrounded. But the main street is going through forests. And the Beartooth Mountains are granite. And you have to go over the Beartooth Mountains, called something the Beartooth Highway, which is one of the highest highways in the world to get into Yellowstone Park. So they have learned how to live in that kind of country. It's not for the weak.
Wow. Now this book is,
because in the summer it's fire country, it's fire season, and in the winter it's
avalanche season,
30 degrees below zero, and
yeah.
Yes, 6 feet of snow.
Holy cow. And then fall and spring, you gotta watch out for all the rains. It's just like one thing after another.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
Flooding.
Now, this is on audio form as well, right? The book? In Audible?
Yes, it's on Kindle and Audible and in print. All available on Amazon.
Who does the voice? Is it one voice for the Audible?
Yeah, it's one. Andy Pearson. He's a real pro. We're happy. Yeah, Andy Pearson does the Audible. He does a really nice job with because it gets really. I mean, there's moments when it's really dramatic, and then there's moments when it's really sad. It's really sad.
Well, I was going to say, plus you got different characters in there.
And he had to capture all
not
that.
Characters, but you have different people.
Yes, men and women. Yeah, so I thought he did a really nice job. He didn't pretend to be a woman with it when he was quoted the women.
Yeah,
he just said it in a tone that was. I thought he did a nice job with both men and women's voices.
When you were writing this, besides all the interviews and the tears, and especially going from writing curriculum to this, what was the toughest part for you writing the book?
Probably working with Dan. Because he just doesn't open up easily, and to get him to do that was he actually, I put this in the book, he likened it to being Cartman in South Park. There was an episode, I think, there was an episode where aliens came down and stuck a probe in him, and he likened it to that episode. And he thought,
oh God,
or he said it was like therapy. He was going through therapy, and firefighters will never admit that they need help. They're the ones who come to get help, but they never need help. But he was going through therapy after the burn because it was really difficult psychologically to get over as well. So for anybody to ask for help, to need help, he said that, working with me on the book was like therapy, very similar to what he was going through with his psychiatrist. And so that was that. So that's, you can imagine how probing the questions were. And, that went way back. You have to understand that a year before he was burned, his significant other had passed away. So he was already it was really, this story goes on and on. He was already what they call a grumpy old man. And that's a syndrome that firefighters have when they're not fighting fires. nobody likes sitting around in the firehouse waiting for a fire. And they have it's called the grumpy old man syndrome. Him being compounded by the loss of Marnie. And then there was a workman's comp guy that I talked to that he paid all the bills, and it was the largest workman's comp payout in Montana history because there were so many surgeries and so much wound care. And the guy would read these invoices on a daily basis, and he'd just go, God, this guy must be a tough old bastard, you know. And so I said, okay, so to get through this, he was a grumpy old man. Now he's a tough old bastard, right? And then the nurses there just thought he was the worst patient because he never would admit he was in pain, never wanted help, would always say, I'm fine, leave me alone. So they said he was a stubborn old fool. So he was three things. He was a grumpy old man, he was a tough old bastard, and then he was a stubborn old fool. And I said he had to be all three of those things to get through this horrible ordeal. And then to come out the other end of it. And he's the first one to say, I am who I am, and take it or leave it. Take me or leave me, I am who I am. And so that I had to capture that and be honest about it in the book, or everybody who knows him, and everybody knows him and still loves him, would know that the book wasn't true. And I would write something and it would be kind of harsh, and I'd send it to him and I'd say, Dan, this is pretty harsh, but I just want you to see it before and he'd say, well, is it true? And I'd say, yeah, it's true. He'd say, well, then put it in there. So that was, but beyond that, I probably rewrote it 20 times, trying to structure it so that it was an actual story, and the story unfolded in a way that I could, that it started with, like the first chapter was the hardest thing to write, because in one chapter I had to say, okay, this is Red Lodge, and this is the firehouse, and this is Dan, and so I had to explain. I had to get that backstory in there in the first chapter and not be boring, right? And say, and something interesting is about to happen to all of them, So to get the backstory in the first chapter without people like saying,
well,
okay,
yeah, that's a lot to cover.
Yes, it was a lot to cover. Here's Red Lodge, and here's fire season, and here's the firefighters, and here's Dan, and something interesting is about to happen to all of them. That's what I had to get into the first chapter, so the backstory was, I had to get that in before the fire started, anything interesting happened, is what I. Right. And honestly, the fires didn't start until chapter 5, and he didn't get burned over until chapter 6.
Well, which is good because, you mentioned how he lost his significant other, which I'm sure you cover in the book as well, which that's just.
Yeah, that's in chapter 3, I think. Chapter 3. Yeah.
An opportunity to really learn more about Dan before the fire even starts, and to build that love up for him, for that grumpy old man.
Yeah, I said, Dan, I have to explain to people why they should care about you, and why everybody else cared about you. That has to be evident, and I tried to make characters out of the engines, because every firefighter sort of claims an engine. This is my engine. I'm the engine boss, and this is my engine, and my stuff is going in the glove box, because they all had their favorite engine. I tried to make characters out of the engine. I can make characters out of the National Weather Service, about the radio frequency, because all of those things, all of that stuff had an important part to play in the fire. So I had to explain all that stuff before the fire, because in my mind, as a layman, I wanted to know, how did the senior firefighter get himself into a position to get burned, right? Because they're all trained so well. They all know what they're doing. They all have a protocol, and they were following that protocol. Right. Yeah. So what went wrong? And there was an incident report that said this should not have happened. This was a freak accident.
I was going to say, does anybody?
I tried, and I put it in there.
Does anybody really know the personality of a fire?
Well, I would say that it's definitely mercurial. It's neurotic. Yeah, it's a fire, and I those are two words I use to describe fire in the book. Fire, and as often as they try to have a plan to predict its behavior, the plan rarely works.
Oh yeah,
because they're trying to predict the behavior of a flame in advance of the fire, and their plans hardly ever work because the behavior of a fire is unpredictable.
Yeah, otherwise they wouldn't last.
Actually, they have more and more equipment, more and more computer software now that is getting much better at predicting the way the fire goes. But what controls the fire is wind. Wind is everything in the fire. Yeah, and wind is what got Dan. Wind is what got California. Wind is everything in a fire, and everybody in Montana knows that. Everybody in Montana knows that. We can see a little bitty flame 2 miles away. And as long as there's no wind, we're like, okay, they'll put that out. But if there's any wind, we're all starting to pack up and ready to fly.
Oh, well, yeah. It's like you said, because you have all that fuel out there, and that wind is just going to ignite it. Yeah. God. Right. All right. So AJ,
and there's nothing they can do except tell us to evacuate. Right?
So, as the author, how did capturing Dan's story actually impact you personally?
Oh, wow. Well, I think it made me become more open to people. I was never as closed up as Dan, but I never. I mean, some people just naturally are open people, and and embrace everybody and everything. And I don't think I was that. And I am much more open to everyone I meet. I made so many friends through this process. Burn survivors, people in Red Lodge, Dan's friends, Dan's family. I feel like I, really become close to a lot of people that I never would have, thought that I would, be open to these kind of relationships and people, because it was so emotional and it took so much trust to do it. That's one thing. And the other thing is being able to, I found myself, I had to fall in love. And I whenever writers have asked me, what's the key to doing this? I say, I think you have to fall in love with your subject matter to capture the pain. If you're going to capture the pain and the emotions of anybody in your book, the community, Dan, you have to fall in love with your subject matter to understand what they were going through and get that on the page. No matter how much it makes you cry, unless you're there and feeling it with them, you're not going to write the story. You're not going to get it. And that would be my recommendation to any writer is fall in love. You've just got to fall in love.
And actually, what did you learn from Dan's?
And maybe...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
From Dan? No, I was done. What was? Oh,
I said. Actually, and what have you learned from Dan's journey yourself?
Well, probably what he learned, which is you have to ask for help, which he could not do and did not do for a very long time. The burn survivors have a saying, which is, between the past and the future is acceptance. And Dan would not accept his new life, not at all. And until he met some of the other burn survivors, many of which are amputees, and just as tough as he is, race car drivers, electricians, and they've lost their hands, they've lost their arms, they've lost their legs. And so he's upset because he couldn't go from a 5-pound weight to a 3-pound weight to a 5-pound weight because his hands were so burned. And then he met this guy named Mark who didn't have any fingers. And he's like, well, heck, if Mark can do it, maybe I can do it, So he didn't, until you see it, you don't believe it. And it was the burn survivors that finally convinced him that maybe he could get back to normal. And a couple of nurses that said, you got to get ready for the pack test, which is what firefighters have to go 3 miles in 45 minutes with 45 pounds on their back. And at first he couldn't lift his legs to get out of bed. And it just never occurred to him that he could ever be a firefighter again. Well, he started, and whenever he would tell me stories of the nurses, like Emily, his favorite nurse, who was short, and Dan's 6'2", and the first time he stood up from the bed and leaned on her and stood up and took his first step, and then she said, "Take another, now take another." He cried remembering her and doing that for him. And then, yeah. And then I think there's another nurse that before he could leave the hospital, he had to learn how to swallow again because they had so much stuff down his throat for so long he couldn't swallow. And they said, "You can't leave the hospital until you can swallow again." And he wanted to go home so badly. And so there were some swallow exercises, and a nurse came in on her day off to help him practice swallowing. And when he told me that story, he started crying because the idea that people cared about him that much and would help him that much touched him to the point where he would cry.
Right.
He could not believe people cared about him that much and would help him that much, because he does not ask for help. That's not who he is. And when people do help him, it makes him emotional.
Yeah.
And so to see him like that, it's like, okay, now, I think that I think we're all like that.
Oh,
we all have a hard time accepting help, asking for help. And it touches us when people care about us so much that they go out of their way to help us. So part of what I look for is, when can I help others? Mm-hmm. When can I touch others when they need help? Because it really provides a human connection that we're not aware of. These people, and one of the reasons Dan wanted to get this book written was because he wanted to say thank you to all of these people.
Yeah.
Right. And these people do this day in and day out, and they never get recognized, right? These are good people who step up to greatness every day. And they send people like Dan home, and we needed to let people know that this happens. And I've had a few people who call me and say, now every time I see an ambulance or a fire truck go by, I have a whole new appreciation of what these people do. And they do it every day.
Yeah.
Right.
That's something, as a Marine Corps veteran, we hear thank you for your service all the time. Every time I see a first responder, police officer, firefighter, EMT, whatever. Right. They're the ones that I'm thanking.
Right.
Because, and you're right, we all have that same behavior. We don't like to ask for help because we feel as if we're the ones that should be helping you. You almost feel invincible, because right. One of the first things, especially in the military, one of the first things we're taught is we're expendable. And
yes, and you accept your own mortality.
Yes.
Yeah. And first responders accept their own mortality, but they don't accept others' mortality.
Yeah.
Or their family's mortality. No. It's okay if I die. And Dan has always said, I'm not afraid to die. It's okay if I die.
Yeah.
And he feels that way today. The fact that he's got cancer, he has terminal cancer, and that's why he's not here.
Well, and look at how many.
But he wants everybody to know, I'm not afraid.
And look how many lives he sees.
Yeah. He says, he has. Yeah. But he wants everybody to know right now, he's not afraid to die. Right. He's never been afraid. He wasn't when he was burned. And he's got people to care for him. He's living in beautiful Montana right now. And so, be happy for him. He says, I have had the greatest life imaginable. So don't worry about me. He sends a very positive message right now. In fact, he said, if anybody has pity for me, I'm going to cut their head off. That's what
God, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah. He's a tough guy. You remember, in fact, I put that in the book. Whenever...
A grumpy old tough bastard, was it, or something like that?
Yeah, it was a grumpy old man, a tough son of a bitch, and a stubborn old fool.
God.
But everybody, everybody describes him with one word.
Yeah,
tough. And they said they would even say, we're lucky that this happened to Dan because he's so tough and he survived and he came back home.
God.
You know, if it happened to anybody else, they probably would not have survived.
Jeez. He is tough.
Yeah.
Actually, after you finished the book, did Dan read it?
Oh yeah. Well, he read it throughout.
Okay.
I mean, he read it probably 20 times like I did. He approved every word. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Because some people have read it and said, my gosh, does he know that you wrote all this about him? And I'm like, well, of course he knows. He approved it. You know, he approved every word. You know, and they went, oh my gosh, you said this and this. You said this and that about him. I said, well, yeah. He kept saying, tell the truth, and I did. You know, I can't believe you called him a stubborn old fool. Well,
well, he is. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
So, you know, movies have trailers, right? Podcasts even have trailers.
Mm-hmm.
If you could create a trailer for the book, I guess in your own words, explain to everybody what the trailer would be so they know why they need to buy this book. Did that make sense what I just said?
Yeah. Okay. I wish I wish I had the book in front of me, because I think I wrote it once and it's on the back of the book.
Oh, jeez.
But it's basically during the summer of hell in a very small town, a town prays for one of their own, a firefighter, to survive unbelievable burns. You know, Dan Steffensen, tries to outrun a 60-mile wall of fire, but it catches up to him. And now they pray for him to survive. Want me to say that? Are you gonna record this and use it as your promo?
Oh,
I probably gotta say that.
Oh, no, you're good. Huh? You're good. That's I can't wait to read the book. Actually, I'll probably get the Audible version too and listen to it, because I love listening to books as well. Yeah. I love listening to them and reading them. Something about that.
But basically, you know, what happened was, you know, a 60 foot wall of fire caught up with a Montana firefighter. He tried to outrun it, but he failed to outrun the wall. And then this small town prayed for him to come home to them, because they were going through hell. And they needed him to come back home.
And I know you mentioned about his cancer, and I know a lot of listeners are probably thinking that it's that he got cancer from the fire, but explain to them that.
No, let me first of all say that. In 2023, which is 2 years after the burn, I got this text that said 4310. I'm like, what's that? He said, that's the time of my pack test. So in 2023, he became a firefighter again. He passed his pack test.
Oh, wow.
Even though a week after that, he was going back. Yeah. In the week after that, he was going back for his last skin graft. And he said, I was bleeding like a stuck pig when I got to Utah, because I had worked so hard to pass my pack test. So he was back on the fire line in 2023.
Holy cow.
Let me make that clear. So, and then he didn't, so the cancer diagnosis was right before we published the book. He started having a very painful cough. Right. And, you know, the doctor, you know, going to the doctors, blood tests, x-rays, we kind of knew what the diagnosis was going to be. And sure, it came back small cell lung cancer. And the only reason he was not on the fire line in 2024 is because he started chemo.
Okay.
And so.
All right. I don't know if you can answer this or not. But because before we started recording, you told me why Dan couldn't be here, and just to hear everything that he's been through, and even what the community of was it Red Lodge, right, has been through. Mm-hmm. Do you know if there are any nonprofits that help the firefighters in that area, or anybody that's been through so many different tragedies out there?
Well, they did start a GoFundMe account for Dan as soon as he was burned, and they raised a lot of money, thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands of dollars. There are there's a Red Lodge Fire. The Red Lodge Fire Rescue Station has its foundation.
Okay.
And they have fundraisers all the time.
Okay.
You should look. Every fire station is local.
Yeah.
Pretty much, and they all need money. All of them need.
So
money.
they're all volunteers.
And 70% of firefighters are volunteers.
Right.
And sometimes they'll just grab their blue jeans and jump in a truck and go fight a fire. And it's just nuts that these people are not supported with more money. And so anytime that there's a chance to give money, raise money for your local fire department, do it.
Yeah, because I know out here, well, at least in my county, most of the fire departments are volunteers. And they're all
yes, they are.
And the thing is,
but usually well trained. Very well trained.
Yeah.
By the professional organization. Yeah.
Those of you listening, and if you can do it for Dan, your local fire department.
There you go.
Sometimes even money, but sometimes, believe it or not, a lot of your fire departments are even looking for like sofas, stuff for the firehouse, stoves. A lot of stuff. So check with your local fire department and see what they need and donate to them, because they're putting their lives on the line to protect you. So, it's return the favor. So, AJ, what's the big thing that you hope readers will take away from Burned Over?
Well, I'll tell you what, the feedback I've gotten so far is that the burn survivors really like it, and that made me happy because I tried to do right by the burn survivors. The town of Red Lodge really likes it, and that made me happy because I really wanted to do right by the town of Red Lodge. I'm hoping that the people, all the first responders, feel like they are being respected and thanked. That's what I want people to get out of it. That people really recognize what these people do, and that they and appreciate that entire environment.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people do all the time go into a clinic or a hospital or treat these first responders with the respect that they deserve, and that I hope happens when they read this book.
Now, how far do you live from? Are you yourself from Red Lodge?
No, I actually live in a town northwest of a town called Laurel, so I'm about an hour away from Red Lodge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does Red Lodge actually get a lot of tourists and all to it? Do you know?
Oh yeah, because they drive through it to go over Beartooth Highway to get to Yellowstone Park. Oh, at least 1 million people drive through it.
Really?
Yeah. Right down Main Street. Yes.
Holy cow.
That highway. People will fly into Billings and then drive right through Red Lodge to get to Yellowstone Park. Yeah. Yellowstone Park, I think, has 12 million visitors a year. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entrances to Yellowstone Park. And so over the Beartooth Highways, one entrance into Yellowstone, and considered probably the most beautiful entrance. I can't drive it because I'm afraid of heights. I have to have somebody else drive the car to go that way because it's a very high highway. It's straight down. Yeah. Yeah. It's considered. I think Charles Perrault once said it was the most beautiful highway in the world. I believe Charles Perrault said that in one of his shows. Yeah. It is something. It's spectacular. The Beartooth Mountains are spectacular.
Oh, I bet. Oh, you know what? I'm on the Red Lodge website right now. Oh, yeah. I'm looking. I think that's that high. The Beartooth Highway. Yep. No.
Yeah. Google the Beartooth Highway and you'll see. Yeah. Okay. That's Red Lodge is the entrance into the Beartooth Highway.
Yeah. I would not be able to drive that. I would, because if I did drive it, I would have to drive my eyes closed because I don't want to look down and I don't want to do that.
Even when I'm the passenger, I have to put my head between my knees and hold on with white knuckles. Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird. I've never had a fear of heights, and then I don't know what happened. And a fear of bridges. And last summer, I overcame the one fear of the bridges. So I'm still kind of nervous driving over them, but I will. But the mountains, I don't know. It's just, there's no parachute going to help you. Hey, no, forget it. All right. So before I get to my last question, is there anything you would like to add?
Let me think. Well, I think that when people read this book, I've been told that, it's a quick read. You have to put it down to collect their emotions because it's dramatic and then it's emotional. Dramatic and then emotional. I hope people read it with love because that's how that's what I tried to get across was the love. And I'm hoping that's the main thing people get out of it. Family, community, asking for help, survival, and inspiration.
Okay. This is a perfect question for you, especially because of writing this book. And this comes from one of our listeners, Hillary. And I'm just going to rephrase it a little bit because with all the interviews you did and everything, and I'm sure there were times when it was hard, what were some ways you gathered the strength to keep going?
I think I would think of how many people were counting on me to get it right. I'll tell you something I haven't told anybody. Dan's brother, Kelly, who has recently passed. But there were times when I did not want to keep going, frankly. And I would call Kelly, Dan's brother. And I would say, and he would say, you've got to keep going. This is an important book and it's going to help a lot of people. And I would just take a breath. And he would Kelly always talked me down. Yeah. And Kelly was a very important part of this book and this story, because when Dan got hurt, he came running and he stayed by Dan's side and helped him in Utah. And he was the reason Dan could come home early because Kelly learned how to do wound care. Kelly learned how to change bandages, and Kelly moved back to Red Lodge with Dan and lived with him until Dan was able to take care of himself. And so, in the book, and we dedicated the book to Kelly because he died right before it was published. And I would say in a lot of ways, Kelly was who kept me going. Yeah. Yeah.
God. How far did Kelly live from Red Lodge?
He actually lived in Seattle, outside of Seattle, Washington. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And Kelly is a man who walks with God, basically. And he told me when I first interviewed him, he said, well, when they called me, the first thing I did was get on my knees and pray and reach out to Dan mentally, because I knew he was suffering. And I knew that he was going to lose agency, and he's not a man who can stand losing agency. And so then I gathered my things. I got in my car and I headed for Salt Lake City. And he basically never left Dan's side.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, AJ, I want to thank you so much. Those of you listening, again, make sure you purchase the book, or you can get it in Audible or Kindle. Burned Over, The Survival of Montana Firefighter Dan Steffensen by A.J. Otjen. And you could actually even go to A.J. Otjen, which is OTJEN.com, and purchase it. And
then go to books, and then
and make sure you leave a full review. Purchase copies for everybody else, and don't forget to donate to your local firefighters and first responders. So, AJ, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. This has been great. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Conversations with Rich Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something from it as I did. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners and share more incredible stories. Don't forget to connect with us on social media or visit our website at conversationswithrichbennett.com for updates, giveaways, and more. Until next time, take care, be kind, and keep the conversations going. You know, it takes a lot to put a podcast together, and my sponsors help out a lot, but I also have some supporters that actually help me when it comes to the editing software, the hosting, and so forth. There's a lot that goes into putting this together. So I want to thank them. And if you can, please visit their websites, visit their businesses, support them however you can. So please visit the following: Real Life Prosthetics, cutting edge solutions, restoring ability since 2001. Go to reallifeprosthetics.com. Full Circle Boards. Nobody does charcuterie like Full Circle Boards. Visit them at fullcircleboards.com. Sincerely Sawyer Photography. Live in the moment. They'll capture it. Visit them at sincerelysawyer.com.